Welcome everyone to our second Quared live session. We're super happy to be back here again. And today we will be talking about purpose and purpose, how that purpose affecting companies. And yeah, we are super happy. We're super happy to be sharing this and to have you in the audience. And please ask us whatever you want to know, because we know that purpose is a buzzword. We'll talk about this in a bit. And we know that all of us wants to know more about purpose, how we can implement it in our companies, and even how we can implement it in our life. But it seems like nobody knows really how to implement it. We know that it's important, but how we bring that into our reality is the most tricky part, I'll say. But I feel super lucky to be having this conversation, because both Alex and Mickey, that I'll introduce you now, they've been implementing purpose in their own companies, and they've been working hard in order to be a purpose-driven company. So before we start, I'm going to introduce a little bit Alex. Alex is the Director of Purpose and Culture and Strategy at GB Foods, and he has a lot of experience. And we call them the Purpose Man, because I think that is one of the person that's been reading the most about purpose. He has like a huge library. So if you want to know more about resources about purpose and stuff like this, I'll suggest you to reach out to Alex. And also we have Mikel Artero, that he's the Senior Director, Culture and People Experience at the African Leadership Group. And also he has been implementing the purpose there, and also like missions. And well, he will explain us about how they've been implementing this. And myself, obviously, that I take their purpose and I help it communicate to the employees and to the potential employees in order to attract talent that is engaged with that purpose. So today our goal is to learn how to make the corporate purpose, or like the purpose of our company, matter to all employees, and how to make that a reality. And I like to have like the why conversation, also the how. Okay, step by step. You know that we want, with these conversations, we want to be as practical as we can. So as I said, like before we start, like we will be covering these topics, and I hope like you participate in the comments as well. And I want to introduce a little bit our framework to understand why we talk about this and what will be the following conversations. So as you know, like we introduced this framework, the Quared framework, in the last session, in the first session actually, and the idea is to go step by step, one session for each step of our own framework, in order to deep dive and to see how we can work together. The idea is to go step by step, one session for each step of our own framework. If you can, yeah, fantastic. So the idea is like today to talk about the first step, in the owner's discovery, to talk about like how to get purpose, how to define our purpose, and to define our meaning and why we exist as a company. And then there are different, and then in the following sessions we'll be covering the next steps. But the first one is like why we exist as a company, and we'll be talking about this. And yeah, and maybe like to introduce the topic, and also like I want to hear your opinions, and I let you talk as well, Mickey and Alex. I would like to throw you the question of, okay, what company do you think has a better purpose, or live better their own purpose? And I'll make you choose between Nike in one side or Patagonia in the other side. And to the people who's listening to us, I'll suggest like, if you know companies that they live their purpose, if you can write it on the chat or on LinkedIn, and so we can like also comment to that, or discover new companies. So who wants to take the question? Maybe Alex or Mickey? Who do you think has lived better, or lived in a better way their own purpose? Nike or Patagonia?
I can take the.
Imagine I jump ahead of Purpose Man and I go and answer the question. No, please, Alex.
Excellent. No, I think that's a very interesting question, and I think it puts into the spotlight, one of the things that sometimes people or even organizations get mixed up when we talk about purpose. I think there's two elements of purpose when we talk about it. One is having a purpose, and the other one is acting with purpose. So in essence, we can talk about Nike, for example. Nike is a company that we can say they have a very strong purpose, right? Which I think is something around inspire and innovate for every athlete in the world. And they do this very well. This is, their mission, the way they want to, help the world be a better place. And they do this extremely well. You watch one of these Nike advertisement videos, you see the athletes that, Nike sponsors, and they want to, you see that and you want to play sports, right? They inspire you hugely. And also they innovate, the gear that Nike prepares, the footwear and any other type of gear, it's huge. It's on the front line of innovation, right? Of technology. So it's a company that has a purpose, right? On the other hand, Patagonia also has a purpose, but I think it's more famous for acting with purpose, right? Acting with purpose, understanding companies that actually do good, right? So Patagonia is a clear example of a company that takes into consideration the well-being of their employees, takes into consideration in an amazing way how they impact the planet through the production of their t-shirts and any other gear. So it's very, very important to understand the difference between having a purpose. A lot of companies have a purpose, and a lot of companies, act with purpose. Nike, for example, is probably not the best one, or recently they don't have the best reputation for acting with purpose for some things that happened in the past, right?
Okay. And so which one do you choose, or you cannot be choosing between Nike or Patagonia because both they live the purpose? Or what do you think, Alex? If you have to pick one, what is for you, what do you look after more, like Nike or Patagonia? Or you want to resemble more when you look for inspiration?
I think it's a very difficult comparison. I think both of them have let's say, a source of value for the world in terms of, I think our world needs companies like Nike. They inspire us to do more, to achieve better, to even question or challenge the status quo. But at the end, also, we need companies like Patagonia that in a way or another challenge the big giants in terms of there's a better way to consume, there's a better way to understand the world. So I do feel that both companies have let's say, a strong reason to be in this world. And without them, and I think that's one of the big questions that everybody needs to ask themselves, without them, the world to me would be a worse place. So imagine a world without Nike, or imagine a world without Patagonia. I think the world would be a little worse. Whereas you think about other companies and you say, okay, if this company disappears, and I'm not gonna name any, but if this company disappears, nothing will happen, right? And even the world can be a better place.
Fantastic. And what do you think, Mickey?
Yeah, not much more to add, but I'm just going to encourage people to read the two books, probably by the two founders. And there's the one by Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, and then there's the one by Yvonne Chouillard, I think it's pronounced, the founder of Patagonia, Let My People Go Surfing. And I strongly encourage people to go through both books. It's great inspiration that you can drive from both. And then you decide. I think that they both did great things, like Alex was saying. In my personal opinion, I was really impressed by the story of Patagonia because it's the first time that I see a company that has a purpose that it's kind of like larger than itself, not because of the impact that it wants to have on the end consumers, but also like it wants to have an impact on the other players of the industry, of the clothing industry, apparel industry. And it in the book, the founder tells you, like, our purpose is to change the way our industry operates, and because our industry is accountable for, I think it was around 25% of the CO2 emissions in the planet, and their purpose is actually to inspire other companies to go on and do the same, even Nike, So that was really, really impressive by Patagonia. But of course, both books, both companies, both stories, both purpose are really, really impressive.
Fantastic. So the answer that we wanted to answer today, and it's the main topic of this conversation, is how does like Alex already answered these questions, like the difference about companies who has a purpose, like the companies that have a purpose and the companies that act on their purpose. So how now is like, okay, we know the definition of it. So how we can start? Like, how do we know if our company have a purpose?
So taking a little bit what we discussed, I want to challenge the way we, and again, staying at a very high level, and then we can dig deeper. But imagine that we would define companies, like how do we define a company, right? Imagine that we would define companies as communities of people that together solve a problem without creating additional problems. I think that that's the perfect definition of a company that has and acts with a purpose. I think that the old paradigm of, for example, I don't know, let's put Facebook on the spotlight. My purpose is to communicate with, or to make sure the world communicates in a better way. But by doing so, they've created so many side problems, right? All the problem with the fake news, all the problem with the addiction of the teams to the social platform. So I think this paradigm is no longer valid. It's not okay to solve a problem and create other problems at the same time. Mm-hmm. Similarly applies for Amazon. No, yeah, they've done great things, but at the same time, there's a lot of discussion on how they treat their employees and all this stuff. No, so I think a company that's fully purpose-driven would act on the two things. They would understand how they add value to society, and here we have a massive amount of examples. Disney, it's all about happiness. THAP was also, THAP was the American clothing e-commerce company. Is also about delivering happiness. So figure out why you should exist, right? What problem are you solving for your consumers? So Facebook is about communication. Microsoft is about helping, empowering people and organizations to achieve more. Figure out what is that need that you're solving, and then we can discuss how you can do that. And the second thing is try to understand what are the side effects of your business, right? What problems are you creating along the way? So, for example, if you're in the fashion industry, you're probably creating a lot of pollution, right? So try to solve those problems also. So I would understand that to have a fully purpose-driven company, you need to have a lot of clarity on the two sides of the story.
Okay, and because it's possible, to create a company and not having bad side effects?
I think 100% no. It's very, even I think quoting Mickey's reference to the Patagonia CEO book, right? Even he understands that by every t-shirt that they produce, they will create a little bit of pollution, right? But I think there's so much you can do to minimize those side effects. Let's put, for example, the example of McKinsey. I used to work at McKinsey, right? So McKinsey, yeah, they solve all these problems for companies. They drive a lot of impact. They drive a revolution in the way, you manage companies. But they're burning out a huge amount of young employees doing so. So the question to companies like that is, can you do a little better there? Can you solve the same problem without burning out your employees? And I think that applies to a lot of companies, right? Yep. We need to look at the consequences or the effects that we have over our employees, over the planet, over the different aspects of the business.
Okay, and now before we dive in and as I ask you the how we do it, I wanted to ask you, maybe Mickey, you can answer first. Why do you think purpose, and I don't know, maybe it's my vision of it, suddenly has become more and more important, and in the last year I've been listening more and more talking about it in different areas, like people is talking about the purpose of the companies and stuff. Why do you think is that, or if you notice that as well?
Yeah, maybe, and I don't have the exact answer here, but it's true that as society, I think that we are at a point right now where we, like, our parents, our grandparents were solving other problems. No, maybe our grandparents were in the Civil War, and then our parents were born in a situation where everything was kind of poor, and people were striving for having some security, having some safety, and to go by the days. And I think that was their particular purpose or way to see looking at purpose. No, and I think that our generation has that covered. In a way, and once you have the first step covered, you want to go to the next one. No? And I think that self-actualization and leaving an impact in society and feeling fulfilled by making an impact, I think that that's the trend that we probably are seeing in millennials and then Generation Z as well. And I think that's one of the reasons. And it's true that when you look for a job, you find yourself looking for more things, looking for stuff beyond the salary, beyond the conditions. And since now the power shifted a little bit from the employers to the people, to the employees in a way. If people are searching for that, I think that companies need to adapt a little bit. No, so I think that that's one of the reasons why companies are becoming a bit more purpose driven. But it's not the only one, because I think that when you're purpose driven, there's a lot of side effects that enable you to actually go further, no? Because actually not just attracting the right people, but actually empowering them to solving great problems and connecting them to great purposes is what keeps them motivated on the day-to-day. And when you have somebody who's motivated on a day-to-day and who feels self-actualized because he or she feels important, then productivity and performance rises, and then you as a group reach beyond or reach further than you could without that clear signal or that clear purpose. So that could be one of the reasons why.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about I would say more than millennials, because I think millennials we've been in the middle of this change, and maybe Gen Z. Like today, I was reading an article that was saying like Gen Z people is super used to play video games, that they see work as a video game, that they have to go make an impact or pass a mission, or because you have missions, and so. And that maybe we can go, and I'll feel free to answer as well, like about this. But what will be like the difference of purpose or mission or vision? Because sometimes I get asked about this, like, yeah, Tony, but we have mission and vision is the same as purpose? No. So and the missions that we will talk is something different. So what is, Alex, maybe your vision about like, is vision the same as purpose, and what is mission then? What is, like, there are just buzzwords? Is everything the same? No.
Alex, before you step in, because now when you say video game, you touch something that for me is really important around why people are motivated to do work. And video game, they say that you can activate two systems in a person: the fear system, where I'm protecting, like there's a lion, I'm getting protected to not be eaten, and then there's the seeking system, where I'm exploring, I'm finding new ways to hunt a mammoth, or new places where I can search for blueberries. So I'm seeking. I have this curiosity system open and I'm searching. And when that happens, it's tested scientifically, there's a hit of dopamine where you could keep on doing that activity for long hours, very long periods of time, and you don't even realize it. Time just kind of like stops functioning in the same way that it normally does. So to replicate that in a company is actually you leveraging some of the things from video games, World of Warcraft, or some of these other video games that are so addictive, is because they set up a stage, they give you a very clear purpose or goal, and they give you a role in it. They tell you, these are your superpowers, and with these superpowers of your personage, or whatever you want to call it, go help the team achieve that goal. And then people go into this, they forget about the fear system, and they go into this seeking mode filled with curiosity, and they could be doing that for hours. So I just wanted to, sorry I got you, Alex.
No.
Express
those lines,
learnings.
Yeah. No, in those lines, I think I was reflecting last week. I think an employee can work basically on three mindsets. One of them is for him or herself, which I think is fear. I want to generate money, I want to generate power. So it's pretty much ego talking. I work for me and my role. I don't care about the company as long as they promote me, as long as I get more power, as long as I make more money. And I think a lot of us at a certain point of our lives are trapped here. The second one, which I think is equally bad, is when they work for their bosses. So you stop questioning what's important for your clients, for your consumers, for society. But it's like, okay, what does my boss want? And I think that's equally bad. And the third one, I think, is what you said, right? When you trigger the curiosity of the employee and you try to solve something that is bigger than yourself. So you leverage the company as a platform to create an impact to society, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's where purpose also plays as you said, a huge role, because to have a company that functions on these parameters, where each employee contributes to a bigger thing, the first thing you need to do is, help the employee figure out where are we going, which is the purpose, and then let, in a creative way, the employee to find a way for them to get there, as Mickey was saying, that they have an important role in there. And that's obviously very far away from micromanaging them and telling them, hey, you need to do this and that. No, it's just showing the North Star that sometimes is called during when we talk about purpose.
Okay, and no, I really love, and also like I see on LinkedIn people reacting that they really love the metaphor, because it's true that probably is how we make people live that purpose. That I want to touch on that a bit later, because the same when you make it, or you are like explain to the employees this. In my part, that is like the inbound recruiting. I try when I teach companies, I try to teach them to write job offers in this way. Like, hey, explain this in this way, because if I read the job offer and I find it boring, imagine like working there. Like I have to be super engaged when I read the job offer, and I want to wish like to play that game that is working in your company. So I really love the metaphor, and we can keep it. But first, I would love, and I see like we have like some questions, and I'll go for them in a bit. But I wanted to like answer this question, because the question like, what's the difference between purpose, mission, and vision? If we have like a proper answer for that.
So yeah, I mean, like let's be very honest and very clear. I think nobody after 40 or 50 years of management ever understood the difference between mission and vision. Nobody ever. It's impossible. Like, yeah, mission is where you want to go and vision is how you go. I don't know. And I think nobody knows. And you search online and you get different answers, different opinions. It was never clear. And at the same time, I believe in simplicity, right? So you need to be simple when you communicate to your employees. You cannot mix a lot of stuff. So I do believe that the only thing you need, in essence, is your purpose, which is what we said, right? Is the North Star. Is because it ticks all the boxes. So why do you want to communicate things to your employees? First, you want to tell them where you want to go so they can help you get there, right? And that's the most important bit. So they can say, okay, look, in my job, I will help you get there. The second thing that you want to communicate is how you achieve impact, right? I think what we discussed in the previous webinar, people don't care too much about, yeah, we reached 300 million euros or 100 million euros. But people care about the impact they want to generate, right? So the purpose is essentially this, because as the definition of it, it's exactly how are you making the world a better place? What is the impact that you're actually generating? So in essence, I do believe that the purpose is enough. Forget about the missions, ask yourself, why you should exist as a company and what is the value that you're driving for society. The rest, to me, is pointless.
Fantastic. Mickey, do you have a view?
Let me switch to Mickey, because there's one element which I find very interesting, which is what and some startups use it, which is the BHAG, right? Which is I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the big, hairy, audacious goal. And I think Mickey and the AELG, so the African Leadership Group, is a very good example of how to transform a purpose, so the value you add to society, into something that is more measurable and utilizes the BHAG method.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you explain what is the BHAG method?
I never heard it in this way, but yeah, it's true. Our purpose at the African Leadership Group is to transform Africa by developing 3 million young and entrepreneurial leaders. And even though, the ultimate purpose is to transform Africa, and that's the purpose is not to develop 3 million leaders. That's how we're going to transform Africa. And even if you would run the experiment today, and everybody tells you that our company is hyper purpose driven. Everybody who's joining, or I would say 90% of people who are joining, the first reason they would give you why they joined is because of our purpose, because it's so impactful in itself, like you're transforming a continent and you're caring about the important stuff in a way, that it's so powerful. But what's important, I think, about purpose sometimes is to make it stick in everybody's mind. It's not about one big speech, or it's not about like a super well-defined sentence that you produce. It's about a consistent message that you can replicate and communicate over and over and over. So the way we achieve that is through the 3 million leaders. And if you go around the company right now, and I could have here somebody who works with me, and you ask about the purpose, some of them would even forget about the Transform Africa. They would jump straight to develop 3 million leaders for Africa. So I think that what's important about these big hairy audacious goals is that it's so motivating. Like they give you a goal, and you go out there and achieve it. And they give you a goal that it, like Alex was saying, it's big, it's hairy, because it's like, how am I going to develop 3 million? How many do we have now? It's like, how many thousands? We get into 3 million. How many years? Because by the way, there's a, like Alex is saying, it's clear in the metric, 3 million, and we have a timeline. It's by 2035. And you have a clear number. You have a clear timeline. And you also have a clear reason why that number and that type and that timeline. The number, it's shared with all of us how we came up with that number. And it's, you basically take how many, what we want to do is select the most, the best of the best. So select the best people in the continent, develop them, and then connect them to opportunities so that they go and make an impact and create jobs for people and help us transform the company itself. So what we try to do is like, okay, how can we define how many top people can we find in Africa? And then what we did is go to America and make a little assumption on the people who go through business schools and assume like what are the top people in that particular space and country. And then can we transfer then what percentage of the population that is that? Then we transfer it to Africa. Okay, we calculate, we more or less assume that talent is distributed equally across geographies. So, okay, now we have the 3 million. And we have a timeline, 2035, because by then Africa is going to have the largest workforce in the world. And if we don't create the jobs and develop the leaders by 2035, who can then create the jobs, well, it's pointless. So we have a clear goal that it's it breeds fear, because I'm like, oh my God, it's scary. Are we going to get there? And we have a timeline and we have reasons behind it. And then we put it everywhere. And people don't even remember that Transform Africa they have the 3 million in their heads. And in everything you do, and it's funny because in everything you do, it's very easy to remember the 3 million in every single little task that you do every day. You're getting demotivated, you're getting outside, like 3 million leaders, and it's very easy to remember.
I think Tony, if you allow me, there's a lot of beauty in this, because, and that, going back to the question on why this is so important, is because you need to have the purpose in mind, right? And you need to make sure that defines why you want to achieve what you want to achieve. And in this case, if you can bring also a measurable goal, it's even better. But the beauty of it, and Mickey, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can change the how. So, or you can have several ways to get there, right? And I think in a world that is changing so damn fast, you should not define your company by what it is that you do, but actually by why you do what you do. So for example, a good example is so Ford, Ford, the typical American motor company. They used to define themselves as a car company. I'm a car company. The problem is that, today in cities, nobody uses cars, but the need is mobility, right? So Ford now defines themselves as a mobility company, and their purpose, is to advance the mobility revolution, I don't know what. Okay, and now they will solve that problem through cars, but also through electrical cars. They also have these ride-sharing systems and ride-sharing apps, because the problem is that if you focus on what you do, which is cars, maybe in 30 years from now, there will no longer be cars. Technology is disrupting pretty much anything. So it's very, very important to understand what is the need that you're solving for, right? And I think that the LG is a very good example, because if you can also add the metric, then it's even more powerful.
Alex, what you just said, if our CEO and founder would be here, he would be so happy, because that's what happened with us. A few years ago, if you go on YouTube and search some of the videos from our founder that have thousands of visits, he was telling the world that the way to transform Africa and get to the 3 million leaders is by constructing, building 25 university campuses in Africa, and that each would develop X number of students, and this is the way we would get to the 3 million. Then we started doing that. We went to Mauritius, we went to Rwanda, and we started seeing how difficult is bureaucracy in Africa, how long it takes to get all the permissions, right? How expensive and lengthy it is to build a university campus. And we ran the numbers, like, oh my God, we're never gonna get there by 2035. So we had to switch. And from there, we adopted a new model that was not dependent on the formal university approach and on a formal university campus, and it was blended. It was I will bore you with it another day. But we switched, and there were some people who were like a bit in discomfort, and he was telling us, look, the line of an entrepreneur to success is never a straight line. It's swivels and swivels and swivels and swivels until you get there. And that doesn't mean that you stop believing in the company, because the purpose, it is a straight line. That never changed. But the how, I've been here for 2 years, we changed at least 2 times. So it's really, really true. And it's really, really important for people to stick with it and to not get demotivated, that the purpose stays pure, stays clean, and is unchanged.
But at the end, is like it gives you like the vision. No, when you have to change your how, at least you know that you're changing strategically and you are aiming towards the same direction. Because I sometimes when I try to explain in purpose, not for companies, like sometimes to individuals or professionals, I say like, imagine like you are driving at night. No, you know where you want to arrive, and you are driving with your Google Maps. You don't see all the way to the city you want to drive because it's impossible. You don't see it. And you go with the Google Maps, which is like maybe your strategy plan. But then something happened and there's an accident and you have to reroute. But obviously you don't turn and you go to the other direction. You keep following into that direction that you rewrote, and you cannot plan ahead that will be an accident or anything like this. You have to adapt on the way, but you know where you go. So, and summarizing a little bit, and that's what I try to do when I do like purpose workshops or the workshops I've been doing about purpose. To my personal purpose is like you sometimes ask why you do what you do, like why, like what make you like wake up in the morning and get excited. That is, I guess, that's the purpose. How you're gonna do it, that maybe is your core capabilities, that maybe we're gonna talk. It was like how you're gonna be doing this or achieving this, and then what you're gonna be doing. And I think the what's that can change. Like first, like the example of Ford I really like, because that is like first I start doing cars, but now I can do different what's, but the how probably are the same still, like by doing this. So and now like we have the purpose we define, and I think like we talk about the importance of having numbers as well. And I want to go to, instead of asking myself, I want to ask you through like one comment from Julia, that he was saying like, what's the best way for companies to share their purpose continuously with the team? So my question is like, how you implement, like for me the question is the king, how you implement this and how you make people get involved this. And more important, because sometimes when I get asked about this question or Julia's question is, Tony, yeah, like you teach us about attracting people that believe in that purpose, that because that's my job. Like, okay, first we have to make sure as well, like in my area, that we attract people that already believe in that purpose and already is excited for that purpose. But sometimes the question is like, but what happened with the employees that they're already in the company and the company didn't have that purpose beforehand and they are there? How we do this, how we communicate, how we escalate it down and make it a reality that everybody understands and everybody lives.
So Tony, I think we have a framework. Put the slide with the 4 buckets if you can, because I think that will help us shed the light. Not our framework. We can go there later. Can you go to the next one? I think it will really help.
This one is the next one.
Okay. Well, it's. I think we have another one with 3 or 4 buckets that I think will explain this better. The one with internal victory.
Like the Decalogue one? No.
Next. So this says internal victory or something like that. Yes, exactly. So I think so. We need to understand when we speak about purpose that you're basically changing a people's habit and you're creating a new mindset for someone, right? And you want, as Julie is pointing out, you want to continuously make sure that people understand what the purpose is. So the question, I think, fundamentally boils down to, how do I create this new habit? And you can create this new habit through 2 ways, right? The way to generate habits is either through impact or through repetition. Think about someone that wants to quit smoking, right? It's either, somebody close to that person has cancer and then you get a huge impact, or you get the message, stop smoking, quit smoking, smoking kills, like every single second of your lives, and then you'll understand it, right? So I think you need to create that. So the first thing, we call it here thrill, but it's basically connecting emotionally with your employees on the purpose. And that's extremely important. Make sure that there is a link, right? And there's several ways here. Usually the first one is you need to try to usually the way we did it also is, once you define a new purpose, make sure that you create an event that is very, very meaningful to everybody, and that speaks to everybody, and that speaks to their emotions. And then you basically tell everyone how does your purpose helps change the world. The second thing is, and Mickey can talk a lot about this, is connecting the individual people to the purpose, as Mickey was saying with the video game, no? And that, we believe, starts with the onboarding of the people. You need to make sure that when somebody joins the organization, you don't define their role from their functional perspective, but you define their role also in terms of how they help you achieve a certain purpose, and achieve your purpose, how they contribute meaningfully to that, right? So a lot of people talk about OKRs, so objectives and key results. We also like to talk about PKRs, purpose and key results. So what is your purpose within the company? How does this purpose connect? And what key results, what specific metrics of you help, for example, in the case of Mickey, achieve the 3 million leaders? Another way is, usually a lot of companies talk about being purpose-driven, but at the end, they keep being financial-driven. So whenever they measure their progress, they keep measuring their growth in terms of net sales, their growth in terms of profit, but they never measure their growth towards their purpose. And Mickey's example was also a great one. So we have a timeline. We know that by next year, we want to achieve 1 million leaders. So in every single town hall, or in every single communication, once you communicate the financial results, also communicate metrics related to your purpose. So for example, in our case, that we're producing food and we're about local flavors, so we try to also communicate on the number of dishes that we produce every year for our consumers, right? So this is extremely important. Find out metrics that identify your purpose and explain your progress there, right? And the last one is obviously communicate, which is at the end the summary of all of this. You need to make sure that in every touch point with your employees, you communicate very profoundly, right? So you in every town hall, in every CEO video, even if you have peer-to-peer platforms, make sure that you create especially stories of people that are actually living the purpose, so that at the end, purpose becomes a repetition. People hear it all the time, and they're emotionally engaged to it.
And Alex, if I can add to the connect part that you were talking about, I think that there's also an example of how can a person connect to the purpose of the company, and how you connect is through your job. And sometimes we predefine jobs in a way that makes it difficult for the person to relate to that job and then connect to the bigger purpose. And I think that a funny way that a couple of companies I read are actually testing, and I haven't done that, but it's something that I encourage my teams on a micro experiment to do, is to actually allowing people to defining their roles. Why do you need to define the roles for them? Well, maybe internally for structure purposes or for compensation purposes, you define the roles and the levels within the company. But externally, why don't you or even internally in the email signatures or in LinkedIn, let them define their jobs. Like, what are you doing? Or make a fun exercise and let people find superhero names to define what they do for the company. So let people define a bit more what they're doing. And then another one that I'm going to add here on onboarding is that you want to make it a two-way street. So it's not getting onboarded on how the company is and what the purpose of the company is. Remember that the other component for a person to be super engaged was to have a clear goal, but then to leverage his or her superpowers or strengths to get to that goal. So an onboarding process is also very useful for companies to get onboarded, and I'm sure that people in the interview or the manager will know already, but other people in the onboarding session and other people in the company don't know yet. They don't know the specific superpowers or skills of that person. So why don't you empower people to actually share that on onboarding more? And once everybody knows, they will be even more encouraged to leverage those skills and those superpowers that people are expecting them to show. And by being more encouraged to do so, they will even reinforce their superpower, and it's going to be a great cycle. No? So these are only a couple of examples on how to letting people be more connected to the purpose. And the last one, super quick, a purpose doesn't have to be the super cool purpose of like, okay, we're transforming Africa. In the culture code, which is another great book that I encourage you to read. At the end of the book, they talk about purpose, and they say how the important things about purpose is to connect to it. And they show the example of a company that was making tires for the snow. So it was tires that were special for running on the snow. And employees were a bit disengaged and didn't know why. And they ran an experiment to actually connecting the employees with the end customers that were benefiting from that. And I seem to recall that some of the examples were like some trucks delivering supplies to some really remote areas, those tires to actually be able to deliver those goods to those people who are living super remotely and they couldn't have the food otherwise. And that changed the whole thing. So it's not about having a super cool purpose. It's just about realizing that you're actually making an impact in the world. It might sound more or less sexy, but the impact is there. There's people, if your company is alive and is making money, somebody's benefiting from it. So make it show, make it shine, and connect it to the people. No? So I think that there's lots of different little ways to help people actually connect.
And about this, I want to share like three examples so people can remember, and then we keep going. I want to see more examples as well. But I want to explain one that is one really famous one, and two that I have personal experience with him, with the power of purpose. So the first one is I think maybe a legend more than an experience, that it says that when Kennedy was visiting the NASA facilities, when they were preparing the first rocket to land in the moon, the legend says like Kennedy asked the person who cleans the toilets, the office, and everything. It's like, hey, what are you doing here exactly? And he was like saying, I'm helping to bring the man to the moon. And obviously, by what he was doing, he was cleaning the toilets, he was cleaning the office. But sometimes we think that the people that brings the astronauts to the moon are like the engineers who build the rocket. But no, because every piece in a company helps. Because if you work in a company that your toilets are super nasty and everything is a mess, and you won't want to work there, and you won't be happy working there. So everything is a mess. So that is like something we have to remember. Everybody in the company has an impact. And sometimes when we recruit, and that's what I explain in my trainings for recruiting, I'll tell recruiters, everyone in our company has an impact. You don't hire anyone just because, let's have this person here to do nothing or have zero impact. So, and also like how this can help, I want to share, like I did a project with a contact center who was working with booking. And they have like a huge attrition. Like people was like, they had like a high rotation, and people weren't staying long, and they were not super motivated because their job was to answer like telephone calls from people who had problems with their bookings or anything. So like the classic contact center example. But what we do is like when I arrive there, in order to hire more people and also like to have people more engaged, it's like, okay, what is these people doing exactly? These people are solving people's problems when they are on holidays. So what we say is like, you are not answering phones. What you have is the power of like bringing these people to be back in their holidays and enjoying, and to solve their problems and make them happy. Because that's what you do. You have different tools. You can put them in another hotel. You can book it, or solve the problem for them. So you are the one who will bring happiness to them. So it's as important, the people who design the website, the people who design like all the emails that you receive when you do a booking, than the people when you have a problem, that is when you need them the most, when you call them to have like people that really believes in what they're doing, and they know that they're going to bring you happiness. And what happens is like we reduce attrition for that. And also people get more motivated, and we get more applicants to the job, because when you sell what you're going to be doing, it's not like, you're going to be answering the phone 8 hours straight, like just with people with problems. It sounds really exciting. No, it doesn't sound really exciting. But when you explain why you do it and the impact I'm having, that is like, hey, you will be like bringing happiness to people because you will be solving their problems. Then is when people realize their impact. And even though they're in the contact center, that probably is like the lowest line of the booking business, but still they have like a huge impact. Because then you have like the more direct experience that you have with these companies is there, and you see the impact in people. And sometimes is what Alex was saying. You have to explain a story. You have to explain your purpose. You have to make people see the impact they have, because people People don't remember if you don't remember them. So to Julia's question, is like, for me, internal communication or external, both, like, because I work with both, they are super important. And then what Mickey was saying, like, then you onboard these people. But first you have to make sure that when you're hiring, and also with your internal people, they understand why they do what they do. And they need to understand that. And you can like translate into this in bartenders. Like, you can go to the best restaurant with the best chef, with the best decoration, with the best food. If you have a bartender that comes to you and is like, what do you want? Yes, what do you recommend? Whatever. When you leave the restaurant, everything was perfect, but the bartender. Just like, no, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to recommend it to people. Why? Because you go there for the food, but the bartender experience, the people who was attending you, is like one thing that's super important. That if you don't pay attention to that, like, the whole experience is like going to zero. And that's, I think, the purpose that has, like, sometimes we say purpose. Like, the purpose is this, like, communicating and have people believing in this.
On those lines, Tony, I think that the role of the leader is so damn important. Because, yeah, through internal communications and through, I don't know, the CEO and the top management team and the internal comms team, you can do so much. It's the leader, so the manager, if you want to call it in that way, the one that needs to constantly refresh how important the job is and how the job, truly builds to the common purpose. And that's so. If you have to focus on somewhere, I would say, put a lot of effort in those managers. Make sure that those managers, first of all, believe in your purpose, and then second of all, understand how to communicate it. And it's funny enough, because I think for people like us, it's so obvious, right? That everything is about impact. Everything it's obvious. Like, why do you communicate euros? Communicate impact, right? But once you work in big companies, you understand that this thing that is very obvious is not so obvious for other people. They're so used to communicating in another way. It seems hippie. It seems, they're uncomfortable. So you need to make sure you spend a lot of time with those people, and they're, training them a little bit and making it easy for them to communicate in this new way. Don't underestimate the amount of effort that it takes to change the way leaders and managers communicate in your company. They struggle with it. So be next to them, coach them, and put a lot of effort there. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because, again, a few CEO messages plus a few, town halls or whatever, it doesn't work. That's not enough.
Alex, on that note, I have a number here. Look, I was looking at Harvard Business Review, and there was communicating higher purpose raises engagement and morale, and they differentiate between employees whose managers A, communicate for purpose, and B, do not communicate for purpose. And then it analyzes the responses on what's the percentage who agrees on the following prompts. So the first one, for instance, is, I feel the work I do makes an impact. And those who work for managers who communicated purpose properly agreed, 80% agreed with that prompt. Whereas the ones who work for managers who did not communicate that purpose properly, below 40%, so less than half, agreed with the fact that I feel the work I do makes an impact. And this goes on with other things like, I'm proud of the work the company does, this company is a great place to work, and so on and so forth. And the last thing I'm going to say is that it doesn't have to be, again, the example that Alex gave at the beginning from McKinsey, I think is a great one. And there's another example that we can share in the newsletter from KPMG. KPMG has a great example of a company that, if you take a look at it, it's like, oh my God, like, where is the purpose? It really is like, I don't know, a big accounting firm, typical work that we do, people wearing suits, that's it. Well, they actually turned that around, and they ran a campaign where they had big posters. And for instance, I'll read you two real quick. The first one says, "We champion democracy. When South Africa voted for Nelson Mandela in its first democratic election, KPMG South Africa was there to certify the results." Another one says, "I combat terrorism in the face of an employee," and it reads, "KPMG helps scores of financial institutions prevent money laundering, keeping financial resources out of the hands of terrorists and criminals." And the list goes on. So do not wait to have a company that saves the planet through reducing the emissions of CO2. Everybody can have a really strong purpose, and everybody can connect their employees to the purpose.
Fantastic. And also, like, since we are having examples, we promise that we will be seeing some examples of different companies. We talk about Decathlon, we talk about maybe Zappos, about Microsoft. So do you want to tap a little bit into these examples so people can know? And also, like, I encourage people, if you have questions about what we are talking about, your company, if you don't know how to implement stuff, please do ask us in the chat, because we love questions, and we love questions related to these topics. And also, maybe I will ask you, it's like, hey, do you have like your purpose clear in your company? Can you share it as well on the chat so we can like get to know your purposes? And so, Alex, maybe you want to share a little bit some examples about how companies have defined their purpose and how they live or how they act on it, or how do you use it strategically?
Just one example that now comes to mind, just to showcase the before and after. So a good example right now is Microsoft. So Microsoft, before, they used to have another CEO, and they would define themselves as a software company, right? So we are a software company, we're a software company. That's potentially not engaging at all, right? However, when the new CEO entered, so I think his name is Satya Nadella, he redefined the vision, the mission. He killed all of these things, and he said, okay, let's create a new purpose. And he defined it as, and it's amazing, the story. He defined it as, we empower every person and organization to achieve more, right? Compare this with, actually, we're a software company. And what the most beautiful part of the story, and now we're going to get a little into strategy, is that through that thinking, they completely redefine their business, right? Because if you say that you're a software company that, you know, does Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, this is one thing. But if you define yourself as a company that empowers people and organizations to achieve more, then they understood that to do so, they had to acquire certain companies. And that's where they acquired, you know, Skype, because Skype allowed to communicate better into people and then achieve more. Then it's when they acquired also LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn is a company that helps you achieve more, because it helps you, again, connect with people, share ideas, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a great example of a company that, by redefining their purpose, on top of engaging their employees, it helped them steer a very clear direction, a very clear strategic direction, right?
No, that's and I think that can be in all levels, because now, if you allow me, I'm gonna be sharing my purpose and how we align everything. So, because sometimes we think, no, that's for big companies, no, that is like just the purpose is just for big companies. Small companies don't need it, or it's not possible to be doing. So I will talk about my solo entrepreneur purpose. So my purpose is like to help people or to inspire people to have a job that gives them meaning and makes them happy. So that is like how you do this. So the way I choose is like, okay, to take my expertise in digital marketing, and also my expertise in communicating, or expertise in my passion, or call it whatever. And then, so what do you do? Okay, in one side, strategically, like similar to Microsoft, in one side, I do trainings for companies about how to work their employer brand, how to communicate internally and externally, how to implement inbound recruiting, which at the end, what I want is companies to communicate that, so people can find companies they would like to work for, and they can communicate their purpose so people can find a job that is meaningful for them. That's one. The second one is the Quared Initiative. So we created this in order to teach and to share knowledge in a more structured way, so people can start doing this in their own companies, and we want to achieve this. But also, I have like professionals to find a job, and I help them with strategies to define, okay, what is their purpose, and how they can find a job aligned to this, and how to analyze companies and to have like a job strategy. So you can define. And also now I want to start helping entrepreneurs or freelancers in order to start their own solo entrepreneurship, so they can have a meaningful job and they can be happy. So you start different stuff. I'm always using the same core capabilities, which is at the end like my digital marketing skills, and also my communicating or inspiring skills, and I apply it in different fields in the what's. So I think all the companies can define that, and then like when you are not motivated, you know your purpose. And also when people come with you with proposals of doing certain stuff that monetary can make sense, you have to say, hey, is this helping me go towards my purpose, or is just like monetary? Because at the end, it's like sometimes you get dragged, and when it's just monetary, at the beginning it makes sense, but then and in the midterm you see that it was like a mistake, because your energy kind of level like kind of goes down, and you are not motivated to it, and sometimes you make the wrong decision. And that happens with companies as well. When you start deciding in the short term to make money instead of following your purpose or your purpose, then is when in the midterm nothing makes sense. And in the short term, like always optimizing for money, I think is a big mistake, and it's something that companies need to change, because if not, like we always optimize for money, but now we see that purpose is more important than ever. And now that people is gonna start changing their own companies, and I think like that will be an interesting point to know, like, okay, what's the purpose of the companies?
So just to bring a little bit of teaser, now that you mentioned all these core capabilities and values into the next webinars that or the next live sessions that we will do, I think the purpose is the key element to then define two very important things. One is your culture, which is your values, and the other one is your core capabilities. Just very briefly. So for example, think about a company like Pixar. You know, Pixar at the end, their purpose is about creating all these inspiring movies and so on and so forth. And if you think about it, when you think about values, you need to define the values that help you achieve that. So in the words of the CEO of Pixar, he said, okay, to create a movie, you need 1,000 ideas. So the value that they need into their people is essentially the value of creativity, right? So in essence, once you define your values, and we're going to talk more in our subsequent live sessions, is the way you define your values need to be done in a way that help you at the end achieve your purpose. So you want to create movies. To create movies, you need creativity, right? So this is extremely important, and that's part of our funnel as you see here, right? So we're going to be discussing about, how do your first step is your purpose. Be clear on what it is why you exist. And second of all, try to figure out what are the core capabilities that will lead you there, and try to figure out what the values that will lead you there. But I don't think we have time today, so we're going to have to reserve this for the next session.
No, but I think makes sense to be sharing this framework. That's why I did, in order to understand like how the purpose is linked to all the parts that you say, like, okay, now we're gonna define, and that's in 2 weeks we will be talking about this. I will already talk about the attraction part, is like how we communicate this purpose as well in order to attract people who is engaged with this. Also, like the match part, which is like how you validate that people that apply to your job offers match that purpose and that culture and that value. So we make sure that people, when they're inside the company, they live it this way. And then like the part of the owner management is like how you make, as Mickey was saying, like the leadership team live this purpose, how they live it and how they communicate it to others and inspire others to live it. And then it's like the communication, the impact communication that we put here. It's like how you communicate so people can live this purpose. And before we go to questions, I would love if you could answer a survey that we just shared with you that give us a lot of insights about how to improve these sessions. So it's just like 20 seconds. And now I'm going to put it into LinkedIn as well. If you can add it, if you can reply to us before we end up, like we will be like super grateful for that, because that like give us light about how we can improve this. Obviously, you can comment and share with us your impressions. And I want to go with to Alejandro's question that I was related maybe to what I was explaining before. It's like how important, or like for entrepreneurs, how important is to have a purpose from the beginning of the venture, like their startup. What do you think?
So I haven't worked too much with entrepreneurs, but I think from the experience of Mickey, and actually I've advised a few of them in their purposes. I think it's important to understand how you're going to add value, right? So what is the need, the unmet need that you're trying to solve? It's very, very important to ask yourself that question. And because I think there's a lot of especially at the beginning of the journey, as we were discussing with the case of ALG, you're going to iterate a lot on how you do that, right? What is the best path? What is the best way? But it's very, very important to stay clear, on why it is. What is the value that is not there yet, being fully covered, right? So I think it's important to ask yourself some questions there, because also, for example, I remember I was discussing with a colleague of mine, the founder of Novicap. Once you start thinking on growth avenues, so how can you grow your company? There's so many ways you can grow your company, right? But there's only a few of them that are, really building on your purpose. Just a quick example here. So you remember Nike? Nike was founded, around generating footwear for runners, for athletes. But then they ventured into basketball, and they ventured into basketball also creating footwear. And the way they grew was by, sponsoring big superstars. I don't know what was at the time, but Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, whatever, at that time. So once they had that superstars, what they did was, since that was their core capability, and the superstars would help live their purpose of, inspiring people, what they did was actually prepare all the gear around the superstars. So they started, I have Stephen Curry wearing those shoes. I'm going to, now make Nike t-shirts, Nike trousers, all the Nike gear, right? So by making this very logic connection from my purpose is to inspire people, and then I have these superstars, and for these superstars, I create the shoes. So why, how, what, right? Then it's easy to understand what is the best growth path for your company.
For me, to Alejandro's question, for me, like, it's one of the key, as you said, like at the beginning, no, like you have to think about yourself, like, okay, how I'm gonna add value without taking it from the society. And I think, like, I don't know if it's a trend or when I'm listening to like advices from investors and as well, they will say, like, okay, you have to be passionate about what you're creating, not just because it's a good idea and financially, when you analyze the numbers, can make sense and you can double the valuation. But I don't think that should be like the goal of, like, okay, I'm creating a company just like to create growth and selling it in the future, because I think that's a consequence of, like, you living your purpose and making it grow the company. But and I work with a startup that was focused just on numbers, and they have no purpose at the end, and they were just focusing on the numbers and growing, and the only purpose we had, it was the growth of it, just in order to kind of like make happy the investors so they can recover their money that they invested. So nobody was passionate about what we were doing, or we had to find our small passions in order to be motivated. But it was hard because at the end, like, the only KPI that you follow and you track is money. And I think a lot of investors that start just because they see a financial opportunity, if the operation they have in mind, that is selling the company really fast, don't happen, like, then it's like they quit because they are not passionate about what they do. But the startups or the founders that they believe in what they do, at the end, you don't focus so much on the growth. Like, obviously you want to grow and you want to survive, and there are some companies that they need investors, but you want investors that also believe in that purpose, not that believe financially in your company. If not, to have investors that believe in what you do, because if not, again, like, we are in this rat race of, like, with investors, they want you to grow, and you grow because the investor, like, and I think it's important for entrepreneurs to understand this and to change this, because I think that's the key of, like, having success in companies. And I want to know, I see Mickey writing down ideas. So Mickey, what's your take on it?
I forget that I'm on camera. No, yeah. So I think that looking back at the live session that we had 2 weeks ago, work or your craft can actually, or your company that you just founded, is actually the fastest way to adding meaning to your life sometimes. And people who don't have that meaning or covered through their craft, I'm not saying 100% of the meaning comes from there, but a big part of it coming from the craft, then they find, and I'm going to say something unpopular, but they find weird ways to add meaning to their life. Some people have children to add meaning to their life. They do things that, should not be that related to have meaning, So I think that it's more important to realize when you're starting a company the problem that you're solving and focus on the people that you're helping through solving that problem than the money that you're making or the financial benefits that you will obtain from it. There's a really interesting, one of the best Twitter threads that were ever written probably is the one from Naval. I think he still has it pinned in his Twitter account that tells you on how to become wealthy, how to unearth wealth, how to get wealth. And he walks you through an amazing journey and you're like mesmerized because the advice is great. And at the end, he tells you, and by the way, when you get to wealth, you realize that was not what you were seeking. So I think that if you go for the wealth, first of all, you will last less because you will be less ready or less capable or less willing to endure challenges. So you probably, be less, it's going to be more difficult for you to succeed. And if you succeed, what you find on the other side of that door is not going to be fulfilling for you, even if you got the money. So I think that these are two great reasons why you should seek to have a purpose, since the very beginning. And it's very easy. You're helping somebody through solving a problem, you've got a purpose.
And also, related to what you said, and I'll be is when now I interview people for projects, I interview people who is really motivated or really engaged with their company. The older they are, the more they repeat that they are focused on the impact, and the money is not like a driver anymore. And maybe they say because they don't need probably the money to survive. But at the end, we say when I ask them what they have to offer some company in order to make their live the actual company, in order to know what they value, and they say the first answer is money, but actually I wouldn't move just for money. It's for me, money is not a driver anymore. For me, it's the team I work with, the impact I'm having, knowing that I have an impact if there are leaders in my team, that I inspire them to be better, to become better. So, and I see this like a common answer. And when I interview young people, always they say okay, money and probably to be learning. But when you reach certain maturity, they say I want just to enjoy working. I enjoy the people I work with and have an impact, even if it's not in society, have an impact in my team and in my day-to-day and into my family. So, and it's funny because it's similar to this, right? When you don't need the money, you don't start working, you stop working just for the money. You start realizing that you enjoy your work, and you see this with entrepreneurs. And today I was reading a post that was saying hey, I quit my job, I start my own thing. Now I'm making less money, but I'm happier. And money will come eventually if you do stuff that people value, but it shouldn't be the driver, the main driver, no? So I wanted, we're going to be closing. And as you know, you can, the people who are watching us in LinkedIn, you can go to getquarted.com and you can subscribe to a newsletter, because next week we will be sending a newsletter with all the notes, with all the recommendation, the books, and also with maybe not, I will say better, I will say a different structure, more structure, all the why, the purpose, about the how we can implement it in the company and everything. So I think it's a good complementary piece. And we just send this. We just send one newsletter every 2 weeks with everything we talk about in a text with different recommendations. So, and in the next week we do the live event. So we'll be doing this cadence, one week. Next week we'll be doing this newsletter, and the next week we'll be doing the webinar. And for those who wants to receive, I would suggest to subscribe in our YouTube channel, in Quared YouTube channel, so you get notified when we start this, so you don't miss it. And also, if you subscribe to the newsletter, you will receive the email and with the link to connect for the next session. And super happy if you could feel the form as well. And any feedback, anything you want to ask us, please do. You can reach us on LinkedIn. If you are in the newsletter, you can reach us on the newsletter. And obviously, we'll be reading the comments both in YouTube and on LinkedIn if you have any feedback. So as always, I want to go to Mickey and Alex and ask them if they want to share a final idea, which you will have to improvise about this, about how how to make purpose a reality in the company and how to get employees live that purpose. So what is your final idea, maybe Alex?
So maybe my final idea is the idea which we started. I think we need to start thinking of companies as communities of people that together solve a real problem without creating additional ones. I think that's what we should all aim to do. That's the way we should try to judge our companies by. These are the new standards, I feel. And yeah, that's really important. Figure out why you do what you do and try to create as less harm as possible in that journey.
Fantastic. And Mickey?
Yeah, for me, I would just say that as a founder, and going back to that question, as a founder, when you create a company, it's really easy for you to understand the problem you're solving and for whom you're solving it. But as new people come into the organization, it's getting more and more difficult to get to that same level of connection. So make sure that as you grow, new people coming in are as connected to the purpose as you are, and then they will own the results of your company as much as you do.
Fantastic. And to complement you, Mickey, probably will say, like, for me, my final idea is to communicate, as Alex was sharing in the framework. Communicate all the time. Communicate externally and internally. Share internal stories, internally, externally, both, because employer brand is about this as well. And it's like communicate, and explain your why. So you will attract customers that believe in what you believe. You will attract people that believe in what you believe, and your employees will stay engaged, not because you pay them, just because they believe in what you believe. And that's, for me, the key question. And sometimes we forget to communicate the why we exist. So again, thank you very much to everyone. Remember, you can go to our website, getquared.com, to subscribe to our newsletter, and also to our YouTube channel to subscribe, so you get notified when we're going to be doing this live talk next week. It will be not next Wednesday, the Wednesday in 2 weeks at the same time, 5:30 in Central European time in Spain. And we'll be talking about values and core capabilities, the second step of the framework. So see you there and have a good week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.